I sat straight up in bed, scared out of my mind. A blood-curdling scream had woken me up, and it sounded like it was coming from my mom's room. The scream came again, but this time, my mom was yelling at someone to get away from her. My 5-year-old brain was racing for answers as I tiptoed into my mom's room. Halfway down the hall, I could hear her more clearly. Her bed was shaking and she was whimpering. I burst into her room expecting to find someone else in there with her, but she was alone. Not only was she alone, but she was fast asleep. I shook her as hard as I could, but she wouldn't wake up. I ended up falling asleep, digging on the floor next to her bed, terrified. I woke up to her asking me why I was in her room, and my answer caused a look of worry to spread over her face. There was not an iota of recollection of the violent nightmare she had experienced. She immediately scheduled a doctor's appointment to get some answers. It turns out she was suffering from parasomnia, a disorder that causes a state of paralysis during sleep that prevents someone from alerting themselves awake during violent nightmares. They prescribed her a small sedative and told her to be in touch if the problem persisted. She assured me that no monsters would pop out of her nightmares like Freddy Krueger, but that I should try to wake her up as ferociously as I possibly could if I ever saw it happen again. Not even a week later, as I sat watching cartoons, an attack hit my mom while she was sleeping. Remembering she told me not to stop until she woke up, I tried for a good 5 minutes to shake her awake. When that didn't work, I frantically ran to the kitchen to grab some cereal and milk. I had seen in an episode of You Can't Do That on Television where someone was startled awake by cereal and milk being dumped on them. So I figured it was a surefire way to wake her. After emptying 3 boxes of cereal, a full gallon of milk, and a liter of juice all over her head, she still was fast asleep and screaming at the top of her lungs. I manically ran into my room to grab stuffed animals to pelt at her face. Anything to wake her the fuck up. Elf? No luck. Raggedy Ann? Nothing. A Snork? Still nothing. It wasn't until I started swinging my Miss Piggy hand puppet with the hard plastic head that my mom finally bolted up awake, completely drenched in milk, juice, sweat, tears, and blood from the marks Miss Piggy had left on her. After another doctor's appointment, my mom sat me down to go over the proper ways of waking someone up. Food, fluids, and hard plastic to the face were apparently not appropriate, no matter how effective one of those were. She didn't need to wake up from a violent dream to being actually attacked. Shaking her and hitting her with pillows should be sufficient, but hopefully the new meds would help her. It was a few weeks before I witnessed her having another parasomnia attack. It was a stifling day and our swamp cooler was on the fritz. I was sitting with a huge metal fan pointing right at me as I again sat and watched cartoons. The fan was so loud that I had to turn the television up to the max volume in order to hear what Doug was telling Patty Mayonnaise. My dog, Ladybird, suddenly came running into the living room as fast as she could and barked at me until I got up. As I left the noisy living room and walked down the hallway to my mom's room, I could hear her yelling at some invisible intruder at the top of her lungs. I turned the knob and rushed in as fast as I could, but halted almost immediately. She was sleeping in her panties and bra due to the heat. There was nothing different in her movements or screams from any other attack she's had, but this time there was blood. Lots of blood. All over her and all over the bed. Freddy Krueger had gotten to her, and that's all my little brain could think. I was afraid that if I tried to wake her from the attack, Freddy would for sure kill her, and then come for me. For a few seconds, I couldn't decide what to do. I'd walk towards her, then run back to the doorway. I couldn't control my thoughts as I saw her wiggle around in agony. I didn't know where the blood was coming from, so I tried to figure it out to see if I could do something about it. As I finally approached her to shake her, I saw where the blood was originating, and did the only thing a 5-year-old boy who religiously watched Nick Jr. could do. I hurried back out into the living room and I called 911. I knew that if someone was hurt, you called 911 and you gave them your address. As the operator answered the phone, I screamed my address to her and I said I needed help. My mommy was asleep and she wouldn't wake up. She asked me my name and age and quickly became maternal. She needed to calm me down, to gather all the information she could. She assured me help was on the way, and she asked if there's anything else I should know. "She's bleeding from her butt! I think Freddy Krueger got her in her sleep!" I screeched into the receiver. My mom's attack had settled before the paramedics arrived, but she was still fast asleep. I let the medical professionals in and waited in the living room. I was good about letting the adults do their thing when it was serious. According to my mom, she awoke to 2 of the most gorgeous men in uniform staring down at her. Once they knew she was okay, and my mom explained to them she had parasomnia, she asked why they were even there. She was so confused in her grogginess. The firefighters looked at each other with a serious look before telling my mom not to be mad at me for calling the paramedics. I had done the right thing. But she had started her period during that nap, and I had called them thinking Freddy Krueger was killing her in her sleep. They said they'd go reassure me as she cleaned herself up. My mom would later curse my cousin Steve out for allowing me to watch those movies at my age. My mom emerged from her room and immediately wrapped her arms around me. She thanked the firefighters and sent them on their way. Right then and there, she opened up about what a period was, why it wasn't scary, and how it was normal. She assured me that Freddy was just in the movies and she was okay, and that if I ever saw her bleed like that again, I didn't need to call 911. She was just fine. As a result, I've never had a stigma associated with menstruation. My mom still had her parasomnia attacks for the rest of her life, but it got easier for me to shake her awake the bigger and bigger I got. It also never impacted me emotionally again. If anything, it was mostly just annoying. After she died, I would catch myself thinking about her disorder, grateful it wasn't something I inherited. And I'd wonder, who was attacking her in her sleep? Was it a memory? Was it a nightmare? She said she could never remember anything, but as an adult, I wonder. Ironically, I just recently repurchased the same Miss Piggy hand puppet that I bloodied my mom with as a child. As I unpackaged it and held it in my hand for the first time since I was 9, I remembered that first time witnessing one of my mom's sleeping fits. I held it in my hands like I did that day and I laughed hysterically. My mom hated this puppet after that day and celebrated when she threw it away years later. But here it was again, right back with me. It's great to know that I have an efficient weapon in a pinch.